Okay, folks, I want to show you, I have my little poster here and it says together. Do you know what that means? That means that we are a powerful force. And the rest of it is kicking ALS out the door. So remember, as individuals, we're good. As a group, we're a storm and we're coming for ALS and it better get out of our way. And that's all I want to say today. Over to you, James.
Finn always is coming strong with the message. I love it. Welcome everyone to another week, I can say now. It's our first time not being in 2 weeks, but in a week, and this is awesome. We've got a very exciting show today. I'm going to turn over to Mira real quick. I think she has a few announcements she wants to share with you, so go right ahead, Mira.
Thank you, James. Thank you, McFinn. I agree with James. McFinn just brings so much to the table, and so we're so lucky to have you on our team, and as well as James. I don't think that we kudos either of them enough, so there's my personal kudos to them. I'd love to tell you guys a couple of quick announcements. So number one, this will be a weekly series for the rest of up until December 21st. We really wanted to show community and that we're here for you. And so we've added a few awesome talk series, including Alone right here, and a holiday party on December 21st. So we're really excited to celebrate with you. Please wear your funny t-shirts, your crazy hats, anything that you have. We want to see it. And if that's your family, come on, bring them in. It's just going to be community, dialogue, conversation. So it'll be a really great time. Number two, as always, we are interested in getting more information from you in our speech study and in our Radcliffe study. Now, speech study already exists. It's everyone's familiar with it. About 15 minutes once a month. If you are interested in joining our speech study, it will help with digital biomarkers. Our data scientists are really on their way to really get some cool things. Get some digital biomarkers. So if you're interested, please let us know. Like I said, 15 minutes once a month, minimal commitment. If you've been doing it for a while, we love you. Thank you for continuing to do that. We are looking for persons living with ALS. So if you are or know someone, please send them our way. If you're interested, please just drop your email here in the group chat, or let me know, direct message myself or Grace or Indu or James or McFinn, and we will get to you. Any one of our team members, we got you. Number two is for the Radcliffe study. It's brand new to Everything ALS. I know I've been talking about it for a while, but we're really excited. We're launching it, and we need persons with earlier diagnosis in their ALS or those that are slower progressing. So people that are still walking without assistive devices and people that are still breathing without assistive devices. It's really nifty simply because you will be able to get that data back to you, which is so critical when you're dealing with neurologist appointments and waiting for pulmonology appointments and driving 3 hours and 4 hours and, you know, even 15 minutes can be a little bit stressful. So it's kind of like a DoorDash of a PFT to your house. So if you're interested, please go ahead and drop your email. We will get in touch with you, or go on www.everythingals.org. It's just our name, .org, and hit that research tab, and then we will fill out the interest form and we'll get back to you. Right now, we are going over some like major improvements in our technology, including our websites. And so with that being said, might be a little bit delayed or a little bit glitchy. I don't know if anyone listened to Taylor Swift. There's been a glitch, but we will get back to you as soon as we're able to. Like always, we love you guys. We love our village. We love our community. It's so nice to see all of you guys here. And without further ado, I'm going to give it back to James to introduce our really good friend, Alon, who is all the way in Israel and woke up, I think, in the middle of the night just to hang out with all of you guys. So I think it might be 1 a.m. for him. So I'm gonna go ahead and send it back over.
Thank you very much, Mira. Actually, I'm in Boston currently.
Oh, that's nice. Oh,
So,
Alon,
Oh, good. We don't feel so guilty then.
yeah, exactly.
We're going to give you a more proper introduction, but I just wanted to say hi. Go ahead, James.
Thank you, Miriam. Before I introduce our guest speaker, I just wanted to say, as we head into the holiday season, one of the reasons why we've had to add meetings and make them weekly is because there's just a lot of exciting news, and we've had people reach out to us who want to present to our community and our family. And I, just want to give it as a testament to everyone who shows up here and participates, and just thank you very much. And with that being said, I'm introducing our speaker for the evening, Alon Ben-Noon, who is no stranger to everything ALS. Prior to the establishment of NeuroSense, Alon founded MediCan Consulting, a successful consultancy firm which worked and collaborated with many leading pharmaceutical R&D companies, including Mediwound, Chiasma, Teva, Solgel, FutuRx, NeuroDerm, and others. The firm's diligent employees were pioneers who paved the way to more efficient and accurate work in the industry, mainly in small biotech companies, while coordinating innovative drug development programs, managing operational activities, and involved in business development activities. And without any further ado, I'm going to turn it over to our guest speaker, Alon Ben-Noon.
Thank you very much, James. Appreciate it very much. And Indu and all the people at Everything ALS, I really appreciate this opportunity, and I'm thankful for everything that you are doing for people with ALS at Everything ALS. I also thank the participants today, and I see that we have almost 100 participants, which is very impressive. It's very nice. And of course, to our collaborators, Dr. Jeffrey Rosenfeld and Dr. James Berry, who are also here with me today, and they will speak as well. So with that, I would like to start. To those of you who don't know, I will just start from the beginning, but I'll try to make it very brief and focus mainly on the clinical study that we are just about to initiate in the United States, the paradigm study. But first, let's talk about NeuroSense Therapeutics. So as James mentioned, before NeuroSense, I had established a consultancy firm. It's not interesting at all. What's interesting is what transformed, or how things actually transformed into NeuroSense Therapeutics. And by the way, we are a public company, and this is why we have this disclaimer. I might say some things, not trying to make anyone here to do an investment of some sort or anything like that. So that's the disclaimer here. So basically in 2016, while I was managing MediCan Consulting, I met with Shai Rishoni, an amazing person. And he happened also to be an ALS patient, but much more than, I don't like to define him as an ALS patient, because he was an amazing person who led an organization called back then Price for Life. Price for Life was a non-profit organization that advanced, like everything ALS, it advanced many aspects in the field of ALS for patients. He knew that many of these advancements, or all of these advancements, will not help him because he was already in an advanced stage of the disease. But he was very satisfied with doing this for his fellow patients. And I met with him, and I had the feeling that, this person is doing so much in the field of ALS. And maybe there is something that I can do, knowing so many bright minds in the field of neuroscience. Maybe there is something that I can contribute here. So I consulted with colleagues of mine, great scientists, about ALS, trying to figure out why we don't have a cure in 2016 for this disease. This disease is known since 1857, and of course it was more known later, following Lou Gehrig's diagnosis with ALS, and therefore it's also called Lou Gehrig's disease. And still in the 2000s, no cure in the horizon. So we thought about the fact that there were some attempts and some developments, but they all failed except for Riluzole at that time. And we figured out that the disease, of course, there was some advancement in the research, and we understood at that time that the disease is just too complex to be treated with one single a certain drug that aims for one single target. So this is where we started looking for the most pertinent targets in ALS, so we can target them all together and perhaps, hopefully, create a clinical benefit. it came down to 3 main targets, and we identified 2 molecules that combined together in certain doses and certain formulation, we may be able to make the required benefit. So, as you see, this is Shai in 2010. He was an Iron Man, amazing. He did so much, sports and was just so healthy back then. 2013 with his son, and this is 2016 with my daughter, baby daughter back then. Now she's older, and myself here in the background. And actually, PrimeC, our drug, our combination drug that we are developing, is a tribute to Shai. His last name Rishoni translates to Prime. When we saw the outstanding preclinical results that we received in the zebrafish models, in 2 different models, I talked to Shai, I told him about it, and I said, Shai, we have something here, we have something we can develop now. And we're going to name this combination PrimeC as a tribute to you, and he was very excited about it. I think more about the results, but also about the fact that this drug is going to be named after him. Okay, so with that, we advanced, and I'm going to now briefly go over what happened since then. We are developing a novel formulation of 2 existing molecules combined together to target multiple pathways in this disease, in ALS. We have outstanding preclinical data results that led us to the initiation of clinical studies. And in the clinical study that we conducted in an open label study that we conducted, we had the statistically significant biomarkers indicating or suggesting that we have a biological activity here with the drug in the targets that we are aiming to reach. So this is great news, of course. We commenced recently a phase 2b clinical trial, we call it Paradigm, making a shift in the paradigm, and the study will be, I'll talk about it in length soon. It's a 505(b)(2) pathway, so it's good news because relatively it's a short program. So if PrimeC proves to be beneficial, it can reach the market quite soon, quite early. Patents were granted and additional pipeline. So let's talk about combinations. We understand that we see lots of success in the field of CNS, in Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's, ALS, of course, with the Amylyx drug, SMA and epilepsy, with combinations that work in a synergistic manner, either through the mechanisms, the synergistic mechanism, or an improved PK. And we exploring our drug, our combination PrimeC, we see that PrimeC leverage both strategies. So we have both synergistic mechanism of action working on several targets in parallel, and also an improved PK, and I'll show you soon the results. We are working mainly on 3 main targets: regulating microRNA, affecting iron accumulation, and reducing neuroinflammation. This is PrimeC, a very plain, simple, looks very simple pill, but a very sophisticated formulation that combines Cipro and celecoxib together in certain doses and in a way that simultaneously release both compounds, so we can gain the maximal synergism between these compounds. And this is just an illustration to show the mechanisms that we are working with on PrimeC, mainly on in the motor neurons itself, in the cell itself, but also in the surrounding, to reduce neuroinflammation and create the survival of the motor neurons. So I'm going to focus mainly on clinical activities that we have done. We ran a small proof of concept trial with 15 participants with ALS. It was a proof of concept. What we just wanted to see is that we have a good safety profile for the drug. We were quite prudent at that time. We used doses that are lower than the dose that we are using today, because it was the first time that we used it and tested it on explored people with ALS. But we're looking also for efficacy signals and biomarkers, and luckily we're fortunate to show that we have very good trends for efficacy, both on the forced vital capacity and on the ALSFRS. And just bear in mind that this is when the intermediate formulation with something with the areas of half the dose that we're using now, and an immediate release. So not the final formulation, which now we are using. So now we are actually using this unique formulation that leverage both the PK itself, improved PK, and doses that are higher than the ones that we used here. And still we saw this nice trends. And that was after 12 months. All the participants in the study opted to continue with the study medication. And of course, NeuroSense allowed it, and we supplied the drug for much more time, for longer time. So now I'm going to focus a bit on the biomarkers, because it's very important to understand the work that we had done in collaboration with Neurodex and with Mass General Hospital. We were looking at our on participants from our clinical study, our open label study, and also on people with ALS at Mass General, matched patients from Mass General. And what we had seen, that people who didn't receive PrimeC, the TDP levels, TDP 43, which is a toxic protein that accumulates in motor neurons, remain the same. While patients who received PrimeC, we see a very nice reduction, statistically significant reduction of TDP 43. The same with the neuroinflammation marker. So the inflammation didn't change over time, over a period of 12 months, while participants who received PrimeC, we reduce it significantly. And this was very encouraging. That actually suggests that we do have a biological activity here. And now the remaining question is, what's the effect size that we can provide the patients? And this is why we're also having this current study, the phase 2b study, the paradigm trial. And I'm going to, before I'll talk about the paradigm study, I'm going to just mention that we did studies that showed that levels of ciprofloxacin elevates in the combination with celecoxib. So more ciprofloxacin is absorbed into the motor neuron cells and into the brain, actually, creating a synergistic effect. And also the fact that we have an improved PK profile now overlapping both a pharmacokinetic profile of ciprofloxacin and celecoxib. So that suggests that we are this simultaneous release increases the synergism between the compounds with the new formulation of PrimeC. Okay, so now with both synergism between the MOA and the improved PK, we started with a new formulation, the paradigm study, which is a phase 2b clinical trial, randomized placebo-controlled trial in several centers to evaluate safety, of course, tolerability, and also efficacy of PrimeCs, and looking at biomarkers as well, with the extended release formulation, with the improved formulation that we developed. So the study starts for a 6 months period. Every 2 months, there is a visit in the clinic. The ratio is 2:1, so 2 will receive PrimeC, 1 will receive placebo for this period of 6 months. And afterwards, all the patients will receive PrimeC for certain in the open label extension period that will last 12 months. And patients who will wish to continue on PrimeC, of course, we will take care of it, and we will supply the drug for them. So it's 69 patient study, and 46 on PrimeC and 23 on placebo. 6 months period of the double blind, and then 12 months open label extension on PrimeC on. Okay, so what we are looking at in this study is the efficacy. Primary endpoints are the biomarkers, the neurofilaments, the neuroinflammation, and TDP-43, which we had seen already changes, statistically significant changes in the previous study. Secondary endpoints are the ALS-FRS, of course, slow vital capacity, and additional questionnaires that we're looking at, and safety and tolerability, obviously, all the safety measurements. This is important, the inclusion-exclusion criteria. So the main, I will mention the main criteria for inclusion, for being included in the study. So the ages from the age is from 18 to 75, actually up to 76 years old. Either sporadic or familial patients with the disease duration of less than 30 months since symptoms. Okay, so from symptoms up to 30 months. The disease progression should be faster than 0.3 point per month in the LSFRS slope. So the patients we are enrolling will not be very slow progressors, but everyone else that is not very slow progressor. LSFRS at screening should be equal or above 25. Since it's an oral drug, it's important that the participants will have an ability to swallow the drug. So in the LSFRS score, it should be 3 or above, 3 or 4 basically. Subjects may be treated with riluzole or edaravone or Relivrio at this point of time. So the 3 approved drug by the FDA, participants can be on them during the study. They should be stable on these medications before they are being enrolled into the study and not change their medication during the trial itself. And the slow vital capacity equals or above 60%, BMI from 18 to 30. These are the main criteria. Of course, if people will have questions about these criteria, I'll be glad to answer later on. Okay, so let's talk about the progress of Paradigm. I'm glad to share with you that currently we enrolled over 40% of the participants currently in one single study, site in Israel. So we have 30 patients that are enrolled into the trial. And I want to mention very important things that implies on the study itself. The compliance is very high. So participants are taking the medication on a daily basis as they should. They are not skipping it, and the compliance is super, super high. No dropouts at all, so all the patients are in the study. No severe adverse events observed from PrimeC. Several patients already completed the 6 months double-blind part. We started in May 31st. So 5 patients already completed the 6 months period, and all of them are now in the open label extension receiving PrimeC. And that made them and us very happy, of course. In Europe, we are about to start the study in the next 2 weeks in Italy, in Torino. And in the United States, and this is the important part for all the participants here, in the United States, we're about to commence the study. And we are aiming to start the study now in December in both centers, Loma Linda in California and Mass General Hospital in Massachusetts. And we are very thrilled about it, starting the study also in 2 leading centers in the United States. And I of course hope that the participants who live obviously, those who live close by, of course, will be part of the study. But those who live a little bit further, we will do everything that we can at NeuroSense to assist with transportation and make sure that they can get to the centers and get the treatments that they should. So, with that, I'll just conclude with the great team, devoted team that is doing night and days in order to advance this therapy, this potential therapy towards the clinics, through the clinic, so we can know very soon if and how effective PrimeC is. We do believe that it has an effect. We need to understand what kind of effect and how much people can benefit from it. And we'll do everything in our power to advance it as fast as possible. So this will be learned quickly, and if so, it will be available for everybody as soon as possible. I want to say also thank you to the people on our scientific advisory board, leading clinicians that I'm sure you know all of them. Professor Jeremy Scheffner from the Bioneurological Institute, who is also the chair of our scientific advisory board. Professor Medical Coach from Mass General, whom all of you know, of course. Professor Ola Hardiman from Ireland. Professor Jeffrey Rosenfeld from Loma Linda, who is also here, and he will speak soon since Jeffrey is the PI at Loma Linda, and Dr. Jinsey Andrews. And I thank all of them for their immense support in us and in the PrimeC program. So I would like to thank you with that. I will be glad to answer any questions, but of course I want to leave a room for my colleagues, my collaborators, Professor Jeffrey Rosenfeld and Dr. James Berry to say a few words, more than a few words. Thank you.
And before we jump into the Q&A, if they would like to say anything as well, more than welcome to.
Yeah, great. I'll jump in, and then Jeff, if you want to, you're on the scientific advisory board, so that would be be great to hear from you too. So my name is James Berry. I'm at Mass General Hospital. We're committed at Mass General and the Healy Center to bringing exciting trials and therapies and development to people with ALS. We're excited to be a site for this for the Paradigm trial. I think Alon went over some of the really key things that I think are really well designed about this trial. It's a late phase trial in that these drugs are well-known quantities, so we have good safety data on them. We'll be able to kind of talk about that safety data, and they're well-known, widely used drugs. At the same time, they're being combined in a way that they have not been combined in before. So that's really I think an exciting thing about the trial, and something that's comforting for people that are going into the trial. It's a 6-month randomized controlled trial. We want to get our job done quickly and then get everybody access to the drug. So there's a 12-month OLE. I think that's really exciting about this trial as well. So we think we can answer the questions that we want to. It's biomarker driven, but with a very close eye on our clinical outcomes as well. This is really where we want trials to go. And then support for travel is just something that we hear again and again and again about ALS trials, that if there's a way to do that, it helps people with ALS come in and contribute. So we're really excited about this. The science behind it is very exciting. It all started with zebrafish and watching how that model responded. I think the fact that we can learn from a simplistic model like that and then move into humans, get data there, and move to a much bigger trial, really exciting. So there are just so many parts of this that are well designed and make us really excited to get people enrolled as soon as we can.
Yeah, thank you, James. So I am Jeffrey Rosenfeld, and I'm talking to you from Southern California now, so I'm probably a little warmer than where some of you are. And I just firstly, I really want to thank Alon for inviting me to present to you. Everything ALS is a group I've known about for a long time and have not had the opportunity to present to. And this is very impressive, the number of folks that come together for this. And I can tell you, I've been kind of busy going through the ones who have the camera on to see if any of my patients are on. It's been sort of fun to see who I recognize. So hello to those of you who know me. But I just want to share the same enthusiasm that James just expressed about this trial. I can tell you, I've been a neurologist a long time, working with patients, had the opportunity to work with patients with ALS over 30 years for me. And from the very beginning, early on in my career, it was always I was always struck by the variability of the disease. And in fact, one of my major research efforts throughout my career has been in understanding that variability, because my intuitive sense is that ALS is more than one disease. I think that it is perhaps one of the problems that we've had in studying ALS before, is that if it's more than one disorder and we're testing multiple types of patients with one drug, perhaps the benefits is washed out by the non-responders. So I've been very enthusiastic about understanding the heterogeneity, and my way in approaching that in treatment over the years has been to try to combine medications together and look for synergy. And so when I learned about PrimeC and I met Alon and I learned more about NeuroSense, I was an easy convert, because I certainly believe that combination therapy is a very powerful and perhaps understudied mechanism. And actually the recent approval of Relivrio as a combination drug was just more support of that. So I held a symposium almost 25 years ago about combination therapy, and unfortunately we really haven't been able to dig into that. So I couldn't be more enthusiastic about promoting this trial to see if this is a direction that we should go in. I am also honored that we were selected as now one of 2 enrollment sites for the US. And so I welcome all of you who might have interest in the trial. We're hoping to be up and running in just a short time. There's just some legal, as you know, some legal hurdles that are just being cleared right now. And once we get the final sign off, we'll be screening patients probably initially by phone, and then have you come in when you meet the criterion. So this is a very exciting trial, and I'm hopeful that it will be a turning point in our directions, because if PrimeC looks like it's as beneficial as we hope it will be, then perhaps other future investigations for new therapeutics will put combination therapy kind of on the forefront, not on the back burner, but on the forefront. So again, I thank you all for the attention tonight. I'm very enthusiastic about seeing where this trial goes, and with great appreciation to Alon and NeuroSense for including myself and my team here at Loma Linda. And I too will certainly welcome to answer any questions that you might have.
Well, we've got some, and thank you for that, Dr. Rosenfeld. I think we can all agree that when it comes to any potential treatment for ALS, we want them all on the front burner and not the back burner. With that being said, I and my other fellow ALS fellow, Grace, will be asking some questions, and I'm going to start with probably the most obvious one. I know it was answered in the chat, but for those of us who may not be able to see the chat, how can one sign up for this study?
Well, it might vary by site, but I can tell you that as soon as we're given the green light, which I hope is right around the corner, the initial contact with the center will be through the email, my own email or the email of one of our coordinators, which will be broadcast. I can tell you my email tonight, and unfortunately, I can't act on it right now if you write to me tonight because we don't have the green light. But as soon as we do, there'll be a screening questionnaire, basically, and it will be to see if any of the criterion for inclusion are not met or any of the exclusions are met. And if you're eligible, we will very quickly streamline a screening visit for you to come in and to be seen by myself. In preparation for being considered for the trial, if you're interested, I would suggest gathering together some medical records, because if you're, unless you're one of my patients already, and then of course you don't need that, but if you're not and you want to expedite your consideration for the trial, ask your current practitioner if you could have copies of some recent notes, some of the diagnostic tests that might have led to your diagnosis, and of course recent notes if you have a any of the markers that your clinic might be measuring. If it's an FRS marker, FVC marker, these are very helpful to us, so that when we are given the green light, sending all of those to us will save you time.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that answer. So our next question here is, so once they're in the study, how many milligrams of Cipro would they be taking daily?
So this is actually something that what we are referring to is the amount of PrimeC, not the amount of Cipro that is being taken daily. So this is not disclosed also thanks to the FDA and other as a public company and we have other liabilities. With regards to PrimeC, I can tell you that the PrimeC tablet is 374 milligrams of active material.
Very specific. I love it. I know this was pretty much covered already in terms of traveling logistics, but just to be clear, is it necessary once one is in the study to travel to California or the Massachusetts clinics in the United States?
The short answer is yes. At least for the study visits. And fortunately, the study visits in this protocol are not so ominous. Over 6 months, it's 4 visits, including the baseline visit. So you'd be seen for a baseline and then 2 months, 4 months, and 6 months in. So it's 4 visits over 6 months. And compared to other trials that we have been involved in and are currently involved in, it's considerably less travel. But yes, you do have to be in person. We can't do some of these assessments. We haven't figured out how to draw blood by phone yet, but
well, when you do, you'll be worth $1 billion. Just to follow up real quickly, was just asked, where in California specifically do we know yet will that clinic be?
Well, we're here. We've been here a long time. Yeah. Loma Linda is located in Southern California. So it's kind of equidistant between Los Angeles and San Diego, but more inland. So it's in Southern California.
Okay. And so our next question here is, can one be in the study if they're in other studies as well?
James, do you want to answer?
Sure. So typically for trials, really any trial in any disease area, people can be in one trial at a time, but it's okay to be in one trial, finish that trial, and go into another trial. There are a few exceptions if there's a biological reason that you can't do one, trial B after you do trial A, but generally you can be in trials serially, but not in parallel. And the reason for that is that we're trying to isolate, one variable, that is the study drug or the study intervention, I should say, and understand how that specifically is affecting the disease progression. And trying to do 2 things at the same time would be complicated. There's also the issue of safety. And I actually will maybe tie this into something that I see coming into the chat, which is about drug interactions. And so, drug interactions and safety are something that are really, prime in any trial that we're doing, to use a word, in any trial that we're doing. Now, in this trial, we actually know a lot about the safety and the drug interactions of the 2 components of the drug that's being tested. We don't know them specifically for a drug that's being tested in combination, and clearly there are, differences in combination, but we have a pretty good idea of that. What that means actually is, for people who are entering this trial, when they look at the consent form, they'll see a long list of potential adverse events or potential side effects. The reality is, when you go into a phase 1 trial, there's almost no list of potential side effects because we have no idea. And so we don't know what to look for. So I wouldn't be put off by that list. What that means is that we have a lot of experience. We really know about monitoring this. And there are some interactions of both of these drugs with other drugs. But again, they're well studied, well practiced. And I think that's something that's really different than a drug that's just coming into testing.
That's a really important point to hit upon. In general, do we anticipate this to help with bulbar patients specifically, or has there been any data to show that it will help improve speech or anything along those lines as well?
That's a great question. And the short answer is we don't know. It's something that I think about a lot, because if I'm correct in my gut feeling that these are different diseases, then perhaps bulbar ALS is not necessarily exactly the same as limb-involved ALS or upper motor neuron predominant ALS or lower motor predominant or very fast, or however you subdivide. I can tell you, to the degree possible with the numbers we have, I'm certainly going to be looking for that, but we don't know the answer to that yet. If there's a subgroup that's selectively going to benefit, I'm certainly interested in that question.
Yeah, I think that's right. The idea here is that we're using a drug like this to try to slow ALS progression. And we don't know whether there will be subgroups that respond differently. What we've seen in some previous trials is that, or previous successful trials, that is Relyvrio, Radicava, Riluzole, that there was some broad response across phenotypes or subtypes of the disease. That may be the case here. It may be that we find more effect in one area than another. Nuedexta is an example of a drug that has, appears to have some benefit for speech that we don't see in strength of other parts of the body. So,
you know, to some extent, we're in sort of uncharted waters here now with any clinical trial going forward, because we have 3 disease-modifying FDA-approved therapies. So I can envision that any trial, not just PrimeC going forward, some patients will be taking all 3 of those disease-modifying therapies on stable dose. Some may be taking 1, some may be taking 2, and the combinations become quite complex. So it's essentially a good problem to have, because years ago we didn't have any confounding disease-modifying therapies. But what it also does, and this I find most exciting, is it raises the bar, because for a drug now to show efficacy, it has to do more than move the needle just a little bit, because we've got 3 drugs that are moving the needle a little bit. It has to rise above that and be even more efficacious. So the bar is raised, and that's an exciting place to be, but it does make for some complications with clinical trial design, because the groups, as we analyze them, will be on varying degrees of disease-modifying therapies. And the disease was already heterogeneous or variable beforehand. So it's we're entering a new era, so to speak, of clinical trial complexity in ALS.
that's right. But one we're welcoming.
Welcome. Yes, I'm happy.
Welcome to the
I'm happy
culture,
for this complication.
Right.
Absolutely.
Well, you said it correctly. This is all super exciting. A big question that we are getting, though, is how much do you believe, if this is all greenlit, will PrimeC cost, and what is the cost going to be of this trial and things going forward?
Well, you got cut off a little bit, but I think you're asking what would be the cost of PrimeC?
Yes.
Well, if you're in the trial, there's no cost, because it does not cost you anything in the trial, except for perhaps some travel costs, which we're hoping to assist with.
And we will assist with.
Okay,
Yes.
we will assist. See, we're hoping so much it happened. We will assist with the travel costs. So the cost will be nil. If you're asking for beyond the trial, that's definitely Alon's category. I don't have any idea.
Me neither, by the way. I have no idea. First, let's focus on the trial. Of course, it's given free of charge. That's obvious, no question about it. We're, as mentioned, also going to assist with the transportation. Participants who will join the clinical study will receive the study medication. This is a commitment from the company for life. As long as they wish to continue on PrimeC, not just the open label extension, we will continue to supply PrimeC to them for free, obviously.
That's incredible. Specifically for those who are over 30 months and they are slow progressors, will there be, or is there a parallel program in which they can participate?
We wish to initiate a parallel program for people who are not suitable, are not eligible for the clinical study. Unfortunately, the company is still relatively very small, so now we are focusing all the resources on the paradigm study. I know that, of course, there are the Act for ALS legislation, so we'll try to apply, and if we can receive funding from the government for initiating an expanded access program, we'll do that, of course, with pleasure. We would love to supply PrimeC to participants to people who cannot be a part of the paradigm study.
Okay, perfect. So, are you eventually considering an EAP for those that do not meet inclusion criteria?
So yes, the answer is yes, but due to funding constraints, we will need to apply for a grant in order to initiate such a program, and so we intend to do.
It always starts with an intention, and so that's the main point right there. Is it true that in 12 months results could be in? Someone claimed that seemed rather quick. And as a PALS beyond the 30 months, could this be available also under the Expanded Care Act, which I believe you just kind of touched upon a little bit as well?
So the speed of the answer is very dependent on the speed of the recruitment. If we recruit as optimally as we hope to, and there's no reason to think otherwise, or I'm expecting that there'll be significant excitement in the community about this possibility, then perhaps yes, perhaps because it's a 6-month trial. So hypothetically, if this number of patients could be recruited within the first 3 to 4 months, and then there's 6 months of data until the last patient enrolled is finished, then there's a couple of months of analysis, crunching the numbers and such. Yes, I don't think that's unrealistic if we can recruit as quickly as is hoped.
I will add that yesterday, the company actually announced that we are expecting to have the readouts from the Paradigm study in Q3 2023, so sometime probably in August or September. And of course, as Jeffrey mentioned, it's up to the speed of enrollment. And we hope that, of course, all the people here that are eligible for the study will join the trial. And all the people here will share the news with colleagues and friends all around the US. So people will be able to participate in the study, and we can enroll quite fast and then get the results very fast.
Amazing. So I believe you might have just touched on it, but one of the questions we have is, when will NeuroSense provide an update on how continuing patients from the phase 2A trial are doing in the extension study?
Great question. So I'm limited with what I can say because the extension of the study was actually an IIT. So Professor Vivian Drory continued the study on her own. And we are still supplying the medication. It is the previous formulation. It's important to bear in mind, it's the previous formulation. We are still supplying it currently to several patients. And I don't know, I don't have the details to say exactly where they are in terms of ALS, FRS, and the vital capacity, apart from the fact that from time to time, when I talk to Vivian, to Professor Drory about the current study, and sometimes we mentioned about the previous trial, she says that the participants that are still on the medication, and it makes sense, they're still on the medication, they relatively look very good to her, but I just don't have details to share apart from this subjective statement that I said.
Well, it gives us something to look forward to in the coming future. This question's been asked quite a bit. Does this trial also apply to PLS as well? And if so, do you feel that PrimeC is also a possible drug for PLS?
Well, as the eligibility criteria exist right now, PLS would be excluded because it's really an ALS trial. But the bigger question is, where do we draw the line between the PLS and ALS? If a person has no lower motor neuron signs, as in no denervation, no atrophy, and various other lower motor neuron signs, then perhaps that is true PLS, quite rare, but still true PLS. And of course, if you've been at this for longer, the first symptom was longer than 30 months ago, then that would be an exclusion for another reason. And oftentimes, in order to make the diagnosis of PLS, we follow a person for quite a while as well to decide when it is that we say this is a different kind of motor neuron disease. So pure PLS, yes, it would be at this point in time, it would not be included in this trial. But upper motor neuron predominant ALS, that is, there are some signs, but there are more upper motor neuron signs, that's a different story. And that needs to be evaluated on a case-by-case basis as to whether you would meet the diagnostic criteria for this, what I believe to be a variant of ALS.
Yeah, I think that's right. There's a lot of uncertainty about, there's just a lot of uncertainty in everything we say about PLS relative to ALS. But I think, I think one other thing to say is that the inclusion criteria are really based on very thoughtful attempt to be as broad as possible while allowing the study to have the statistical power it needs to answer the question. That is a really, really difficult thing. And I want everyone to know the care and the thought and the real agony in some ways that goes into making these inclusion criteria. No one takes this lightly. I think when we approach these criteria, and I know this is true for this company, the board of advisors, that when we make an inclusion criteria or an exclusion criteria, we're acutely aware that of people that will be excluded by that, and we never want to have something that's there just to be there. It has to be serving a purpose, and that purpose is to be able to run the trial and answer the question, and that's difficult. But it comes back to some of these questions about EAPs and the potential for funding for an EAP too.
Yeah, I agree with that. Absolutely. There's an interesting question that I see come up 2 or 3 times now in the chat about the inclusion criteria state 30 months from the first symptom, not the diagnosis, but the first symptom of weakness. And then the question expressed in various forms is, how do you determine when the first symptom was, the date of the first symptom? That is a challenge. And I actually have been a little worried about that, because sometimes somebody might interpret something that becomes something else. Maybe there's a radiculopathy, a compression of a nerve root or something, and on top of something later that becomes ALS. Where do you draw the line? That's going to take some discussion about the history and some more detailed interviews. So I think it's a great question. I'm suspecting I'm going to be dealing with this repeatedly about where you start the clock, so to speak, especially if it's close to 30 months. But we'll just ask a lot of questions as to what happened at that time, and did that weakness go away, and other weakness come after that? Maybe the clock starts at a different time. So it's a great question that I think highlights one of the points that we're going to need to hone down on in the inclusion criteria.
Good point.
Okay, well, thank you for all that. It's perfect. So are there any visits in the extended 12-month trial? And if so, how many?
In the open label trial, there are visits. I don't have that open.
Yes, it's every 3 months. The frequency changes from every 2 months in the double-blind part to every 3 months in the open label extension.
I know we want to be respectful of all 3 of your time, since we've got different time zones here. So this may be the last question, but I feel like it's a perfect last 2 questions to end this on. Firstly, how many people are you anticipating or hoping to get into the trial in total? And of course, where can anyone find out more about the study and the eligibility and inclusion criteria?
Okay, so we are aiming to enroll 69 participants. Currently, we have 30 participants in the study. It's a competitive recruitment, I have to mention. So once we get to 69, we stop enrollment, at least for now, with the hope, of course, to analyze the data. We might, okay, it's too early to mention that. When I'll have some news, I'll share it about possible changes in this. But basically, it's up to 69 participants. Once we get there, we stop. And clinical centers will, the sites will recruit as fast as they can the participants until we reach the number of 69. And I think that there was another question.
About where more information.
More information, yes. So, of course, in clinicaltrials.gov, we have information about the study. Also, in NeuroSense website, we have information about the paradigm study, and each of the centers, Mass General and Loma Linda, will have their own brochures describing the study in more details and the medication and inclusion, exclusion criteria, everything that is important, of course, for the participants to be aware of.
Amazing. I want to thank every single one of you for joining us tonight. This was extremely informative. Anytime there's a new trial out there, we love hearing about it and, you know, getting our community to yours. We enter the next portion of this talk series is going to be the open forum. We stop the recording. You're more than welcome to join, but we do understand you have a very busy plate on your hands. So no offense if you have to depart for us as well now here as well. But with that being said,
sorry,
yes.
I'm going to stay and I'm going to listen. But first of all, I want to say again, thank you, to Indu, to all the people at Everything Else, and specifically today to James and to Jeffrey for joining me here and for our amazing collaboration. So thank you, guys.
Thank you, James. Thank you, Jeffrey. And thank you, Alon, for giving this great presentation.
And likewise, thanks for having us. And
Yeah,
thanks to everyone for being here and being